Hi everyone, my name is Alex Johansson. I'm going to be running a game development course with you over the next 12 weeks. We're going to go over a variety of different stuff using the Unreal Engine, and then we're going to create a 1 minute gameplay sequence capturing like the essence of a gameplay loop. Just quickly first, my name is Alex Johansson. I'm an app developer. I've released a number of commercial releases. I also do kind of a variety of different stuff on the side, like installation design and educational workshops. Obviously, I'm a lecturer, and I also help run the local networking group, Cambridge Game Devs. Obviously, a bit quieter at the moment with everything that's happening at the moment. So, digging straight into the module content, what we're going to be using is the Unreal Engine. I assume most of you know what that is. We're going to be covering a variety of topics. Obviously, there's going to be quite a significant focus on blueprints, but we're going to cover a variety of other topics as highlighted here. Yeah, and as we kind of cover those, you're going to document those in a tutorial space that we've created for you. And at the end of the period of time that you're working on this, you're going to essentially create your own version of it. So as highlighted here, um, each week we'll cover one element of the tutorial content, at the end of which you'll build an interactive experience based on space and time constraints. We've created a designated environment for you to use, and you've got a 1 minute time limit to have the experience within. Breaking down the rubric, obviously this looks quite intimidating from the offset, but actually it's quite straightforward. So for the tutorial, we're basically giving you a series of tasks that you need to complete and show evidence of, with what's being covered in the tutorials. And as you go through it, if you, week to week, if you complete these tasks, it should be relatively straightforward. Yeah, like I'll be here to help you with this, and as long as you complete these tasks, you should do well in this section. So this is worth 30% of your grade. The main gameplay sequence is worth 70%. That is a breakdown of functional gameplay, having made sure that you've got your blueprints implemented in there. Having decent level design and kind of solid tutorial experience, and making sure that your project's organized. Kind of pretty straightforward stuff. And yeah, as part of these, you're going to submit these in the format of a template that we've provided. So this will constitute a tutorial exercise scene and a gameplay sequence. We'll be going through this in just a moment. And as I kind of alluded to before, these are finite spaces. These you shouldn't be designing outside of these spaces. I've dealt with submissions before where the students have built ridiculously huge landscapes, which take half an hour to traverse, and don't actually have much of substance to show. So I would much prefer, as would, to be blunt, someone in industry who's viewing your portfolio to have a very, very concentrated essence of what your skill level is. Just 1 minute of gameplay. What's known in the industry as a vertical slice. One thing that I would highlight as part of this is please make sure to playtest this with other people. We'll be going over this as part of the experience. You playing this repeatedly, you're very, very likely, I would say from my own experience of playing games, is you become blind to the difficulties of your own project. So having lots of different people test it should make sure that you keep within that 1 minute time span. Other than that, making sure that the version of Unreal that you're using is correct is crucially important. Within the next week, we'll be getting the final list of softwares for the module. I'm 90% sure that we're going to be using 0.25. I've spoken to the tech staff; they're just finalising stuff. The resources that I'll be providing you with are going to be made in 0.23. This is just a contingency to make sure that we don't have any issues in that on that regard. Some really important things to keep in mind. This is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make with the modules that I've taught over the years. Make sure that you cover both parts of the rubric rather than just focusing on one. So rather than just covering the tutorial content, or alternatively just doing the playtesting stuff, probably more so the other way around. You're not going to get very far if you just do the tutorial content. But if you neglect the tutorial content, those are 30 marks that you're going to miss out on for less effort than it would require to push up into that higher 70 boundary. The number of projects that I've dealt with, even last semester, where I assigned students a journal and a project, and I wasn't able to give them the grade that they deserved because they'd just not done the work for the journal. So they were 30 points down, which was 3 grade boundaries, which is huge. That's the difference between a first and like a 2-2, or even worse. So please make sure that you cover both parts of the rubric. One component of that I would suggest is try to space out the tutorials. So rather than just cramming them all in one go, I've got these spread out over a number of weeks. This is to make it easier for you, so you can kind of absorb this stuff over time. Do that rather than cramming them all in at the end, because you're not only going to have to do that, but you're also going to have to polish up your own project, and you'll need that knowledge to get your project to a higher level. This is a really important one. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. Keeping your scope reasonable for this is going to be really, really important. Make sure that you talk to me before you decide on an idea, because I've got a good gauge of what's achievable in the time span you've got. Obviously I'll need to get to know you a lot over the course of the module, but making sure that you keep the experience limited and focused is really, really important. Hopefully the constraints should help with that. But yeah, just think about how you can design just a really satisfying, or interesting experience in just that short period. So admin time or office hours, I am assigned 1 hour a week in which you can come to me and ask for help, and get any, if there's any issues that you're having, you can kind of get assistance with. In previous semesters that I've been working with students, only less than 10% of my time has actually been used, which is a shame, because I'm here to help you, and if you don't come and use that time, I'm just sat here twiddling my thumbs for an hour. And there are students that I've definitely been able to help in these situations. So try to take advantage of that. Previously, it was set on a specific day, so it would be I think it was Wednesday last year. But what I'm going to do now to try and accommodate a bit more with the current pandemic is, because I work in a similar, in the same industry as you lot will be. I'm just at my desk, and I'm reasonably flexible in my schedule. So as long as you arrange it in advance, I'm able to meet with you most days of the week. You know, if you want like half an hour on one day or 20 minutes on another day, you know, or you know, the full hour on another day. So, um, you know, just drop me a message on Discord or through email, and we can arrange something. Don't let this time go to waste. And yeah, other than that, like something to keep in mind is that this is like one of the best times for you to innovate commercially. Um, sorry, innovate before you have to kind of factor in commercial constraint. Um, you know, when I build games, I've got to think about market audience, in particular with the App Store, because if you're building stuff that doesn't abide to trends, you know, you can very easily get lost into obscurity. But with these projects, you know, you can show as much creativity and be as innovative as you want, without any of the risk. Um, yeah, try to take advantage of this time. And keep in mind that all of these things that you're developing, are potential portfolio pieces. You know, I've seen from the previous times I've run this module, I've seen students produce work that I think, you know, is fantastic portfolio work. You know, or even just something that makes an incredibly compelling, you know, mechanic that you could take to a publisher or just showcase at some kind of event, submit for exhibiting. Obviously, that kind of leads quite nicely into my next point. Uh, Obviously, it's one thing to say don't waste the time, but we are in the middle of a pretty existential time. Um, and I'm aware that these are not optimal circumstances to be doing a degree. Um, I certainly wouldn't want to be in this position. Um, so from the offset, you know, I respect you all tremendously for forging on with this. Um, and if you find yourself needing help or having any issues, um, in particular related to this module, if you're in a position where you can't do the work remotely because your computer isn't uh, you know, good enough technically, try not to leave these questions till last minute. Get in touch with us sooner rather than later, and that way we can help you. I've had it before where students have come to me 2 weeks before the submission, or even a week or days before the submission, and the sad thing is that there's very little I can do at that point, other than, you know, them mitigate or get an extension, and that's, you know, that's not great for anyone. So if you're having problems, get in touch sooner rather than later, um, because, you know, we're here for you, but we need to know if you're having problems. Okay, so if you have any questions, obviously this is a recording, so this would be the time where you would ask questions. But in the session that we're going to have after this, uh, feel free to kind of ask any questions in there. Failing that, you can drop stuff in the Discord, or there's mine and Dom's emails here, that you can kind of get in touch with and inquire about. Yeah. So other than that, we're going to dive into Unreal real quick. We're going to do a kind of a whistle stop tour of the software, and yeah, just have a little nosy around. Okay, so we are now in Unreal. For any of you familiar with Unity, you might find this quite a familiar view, obviously with some kind of differences between them. You can see up here in the top corner, you've got your kind of palette filled with lots of different stuff that you can put in your scene. At the moment, we've got this central viewport that is black. I'll be going over why that's the case in just a moment. You've got your content browser at the bottom with a variety of different folders and content that you can access. You can see here that there's the two scenes that I mentioned in the presentation, which we'll go into in just a sec. You've got your details panel. That's usually when you select an object, you'll get like a bunch of information that you can then edit and tweak. And then you've got your kind of wider world settings where you can, you know, define things like the you know, which pawn is in control. So whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a character, you know, adjusting what the kill boundaries are for the environment, all that stuff. And then finally, you've got your world outliner. That's similar to your hierarchy in Unity, where you've got like all of your stuff that's in your world environment that you can kind of stack and organize and filter through when you're establishing your scene. So what we'll do now is we'll pop open the tutorial exercises project. We don't need to save that environment we're in, and you can see that explains why you had a pitch black scene. You might find this when you open Unreal projects. If it just defaults to an empty scene, you'll be faced with an empty environment. So do factor that in when you're working with things. You can see here I've got this cubed space. This is kind of your boundaries defined. You've got like a wider world box, sorry, skybox that you can kind of have a nosy around, and then you've got your kind of character module in the middle of the space. And you can see here from the world, outliner that you've got a bunch of stuff already kind of stored in there. Yeah, so if I just click play, you can see my little character, can kind of look around the space. You're going to be building your game based around a first-person character experience. Yeah, and just kind of off the bat, you've got, it's kind of difficult to see on a environment like this, but you've got a four-way movement and then kind of the controls with a mouse to be able to navigate. What we don't have at the moment, which would be useful to have, would be the ability to jump, which we don't have right now, and the ability to crouch, which we don't have either. So that's going to be the small task that I'm going to introduce you to as part of this. First thing that might be quite useful for you to know, for generally navigating around this space, it's the crucial input that you need to know for it is to hold the right click. So if you hold right click, you can and then move the mouse, you can kind of pivot your camera angle. And then if you, whilst doing that, not necessarily need to move at the same time, but if you then do WASD, you can kind of move around in world space. If you do Q and E, you can move vertically. And yeah, that kind of should give you enough to be able to navigate the space. And then you can scroll to zoom in and out. Another kind of handy thing is, I believe, why is that not adjusting? Yeah, it is. Okay. It's not showing it in the top corner, but if you right click and you have a scroll wheel, you can adjust the speed of which your movement. So you can, yeah, I could scroll it all the way to the bottom, and if I've got a really small environment, I can just move at a slow speed, or I can crank it all the way up to the top, and I can move really fast around a larger environment. Obviously, for what we've got here, probably want something in the middle. Yeah, we'll be going through a lot more complex stuff in the, and more kind of getting to know this interface in the Unreal Basics tutorial. But just for now, I'm just going to get us started with a really simple task that you should all be able to complete. We're going to take our first little dive into blueprints just to get a basic jump and crouch system set up. So if I go into the default content and then go into packages and then first person and finally blueprints, you'll see that there's this first person character blueprint here. You can obviously search for that by searching something like first person character. What you could also do is you could select the blueprint in the scene. You can see it in the world outlier here. And if I go to the details screen, we can access the blueprint. So for anyone wondering, blueprints are basically the kind of structure that you use. They're almost like prefabs. You use it to kind of store all your code within. You'll have like a series of components that your scripts, your audio, all that stuff will be kind of connected to this. So we're just going to hop in here. So open Blueprint Editor. That'll open up another window. This is something that you need to keep in mind with Unreal, which is kind of annoying. It personally drives me up the wall. Is because you've got this in a different window, unless you've got a different browser, it can be quite a faff moving backwards and forwards between this window and this one, because it doesn't close when you test, so you have to keep minimizing it and opening and minimizing it. So what you can do, which is preferable to some people, is you can put it in the top tab here, so you can kind of alternate between relatively quickly. The only thing to make sure is that you don't X out of the blueprint window and X out of the game. So you can see here, these are like the blocks of code. It's similar to, if any of you have used Playmaker before, or Unity's kind of announced software Bolt. It's all kind of module based with kind of lines going between it. Kind of very kind of predictable. You can kind of logically follow stuff through for kind of the function of things. And yeah, what you'll notice in this section of code here that we've got is that it doesn't seem to be anything about jumping. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're just going to do a real simple task. You can see that I'm moving around here, similar to the main gameplay space. I'm using right click and I'm clicking and dragging to move around the space. Using left click allows you to select stuff and kind of choose individual stuff, or drag kind of nodes, lines from nodes. Yeah, and then other than that, just scroll in and out to move around the space. Another thing that you need to know, which would be quite useful, is rather than holding and clicking and dragging, if you just click once with the right click, it brings up essentially the library to access all of the scripts that you're wanting to be able to go for. And this obviously takes time. You're going to need to learn like the terminology of the specific terms you're looking for when you're doing your when you're assembling these scripts. For now, we're just going to do an input. So if I scroll up to the top, sometimes it'll default to stuff further down. We are going to get what are known as action events. So you can see this one here, jump. This is bound to a specific key under settings. This is only for certain functions. Jump is has already been created. So I'm just going to choose this here. And you can see I've got this nice little node here that has each of the different functions. It can get the information out of what key it is, which in this case is spacebar. I've got the details up here, which kind of get some extra information. Some blocks will have more useful information than this necessarily. Yeah, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drag out a line, and yeah, I'll get stuff that's related. You'll see there's a little tick box here called context sensitive. This means that like the blocks that it's bringing up are what's possible within the constraints of connecting off the back of this. Now, in the case of the input action jump, it's pretty open. Like it's going to allow you to do most things because it's just giving an input and you can decide the output. But when you're dealing with like specific variables or things like that, you have to kind of be a bit more specific with what you're choosing. But in this case, it's very straightforward. There is a function called jump, and I can just connect that up. So now these two blocks together should, in a pretty straightforward way, if I just click compile, that's a really important part of this process. I nearly minimize this. That just means obviously that your code is good to run. Make sure that you do that before you run your code. It's pretty useful. If I click play now, and then if I press space, got a nice little jump. So kind of lastly, what I'll do is I'm just going to create one more. So I'm going to search for crouch. That's useful, but you'll notice that when I searched for input, there wasn't actually an input for crouch. nothing comes up. So the reason for that is because there's not been anything assigned for jump. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use a keyboard event. And you know, these keyboard events, this is obviously a refined list, but you can access most letters on the keyboard. You can either just use these or you can assign actions. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to grab that there, connect that across, and just compile one more time. And now I should. Oh, wait. Okay, I understand now. I've realized what mistake we're making. So it is working. I've just missed out the crucial thing. So with jump, you just have to launch and the character will come back down. Some of you that are a little bit sharper eyed might have spotted, whoops, that we've crouched, but we haven't defined the inverse state. So if we right click and search for uncrouch, it'll revert once that key releases back to an uncrouch state. That was a mistake on my part. Yeah, hopefully not the first of many. So yeah, I'll adjust that back to what it was before. And you should see now that our character has those additional movements. So can crouch and can jump. And that'll just kind of allow us to navigate our space and have a little bit, something a little bit more interesting than just wandering as some vessel. Something that might be also quite useful to know for your experience in Unreal. Usually in the top right hand corner there's a bunch of tutorial content. There's tons of resources and materials on the Unreal website. I'm going to be putting up some kind of supplementary information in kind of workbooks on top of the materials we'll be covering from week to week. You're more than welcome to go through in your own time. Something that's also really useful within Unreal itself is if you do Control and Alt and hover, it gives you little previews explaining what functions do. So it doesn't work for everything, but it does give you a greater description of like things like the details panel, world settings, and when you get into stuff like these panels here, can be really handy for kind of explaining what certain functions do. Yeah, and any of these blocks here, you don't need to hold that key down for these. You can just hover over and it'll give you a summary. Yeah, so that's kind of what we'll just be covering for now. If I just go back to the main content, just for kind of shifting between the different scenes, you can see that it's relatively easy to do. Remembering that you need to be completing the tutorial exercises in the same project that you are the gameplay sequence. So you'd create your tutorial exercise in here, and you'll create your gameplay sequence in here. Yeah, all that's kind of really left to say, and I'll kind of start with it in the next project. So the next tutorial is, depending on what platform you're watching these on, it might be worth just speeding up the video, just so you can kind of get through this content quicker. That's what I tend to do when I watch tutorials. It's a nice little tip. Cool. So next time we have one of these videos, I'm going to be showing you the geometry editor, kind of bringing stuff into the scene, and kind of getting used to the different materials and the general workflow of assembling stuff in a scene. Cool. Thanks for listening.